Real life planning scenario. I had a client recently say, gosh, this is just an expensive time of the year. My finances are not in good shape. Well, how do you solve that? How do you make that work for you? I've got the tried and true strategy, that and more coming up. My name is Mike Bernard. I'm the host of the Wise Money Show. I'm also one of the certified financial planners right here at Korhorn Financial Group. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and smash that thumbs up button. Real life planning story. Obviously, we are financial planners here, the Wise Money Show, and so they're all kind of real life planning scenarios. But this one, I'm not surprised, but I wasn't prepared for it. Okay, that's the same thing. Individual meeting with recently, their finances. I would argue they have built up more wealth and saved up more dollars than what they will use in their lifetime. I can confidently say that. And they're at a stage in life where they're retired and finances should be pretty smooth for them. And we meet a couple times a year to ensure that that's the case, having peace of mind with their finances, that clarity and confidence I talk about all the time, and the creativity that we bring of, hey, here's a different strategy to consider to improve your tax situation, reduce the taxes you pay over your lifetime. They've been clients for, 15 years. And this is why I'm not surprised, but it caught me off guard because their finances and cash flow should be an easy street the way we have things set up. And at the beginning of the conversation, just getting an update on, hey, how are things going? What's new with the family? And what have you guys been doing? That then leads into, hey, how are things going in your present financial position? But that's a pretty geeky thing to say. So normally the real life term is, hey, how's cash? How's cash flow? Any stressors? Obviously, everyone's dealing with inflation. You guys doing good with, the income sources, the amount of income, all that sort of stuff. And maybe it was just a raw moment for them or something, but he just sort of exhausted said, this is just an expensive time for us. And I know absolutely inflation plays a role in it, but he went on to say that, yeah, they like to have a certain amount of float in their checking account where they don't have to worry about writing the check or swiping the debit card or something and having it even get close to an overdraft. So they have a nice float, a lot more than most people. And that float had been eaten into. And he said, it just feels like all the expenses come up right now. Yeah, there were some unique ones. They just had some really big car expenses that were out of the blue. They weren't expecting those. Just had some medical expenses as well that they weren't expecting. But on top of that, apparently for their situation, they had some associations for their house. Those expenses were due. I'm not sure exactly when property taxes were due in their area or are due, but they said property taxes are coming up. They just got their long-term care insurance premiums and a life insurance premium as well. Those types of expenses normally are cheapest if you pay them once at one time a year. And then on top of that, they had their home, auto, and umbrella insurances all coming due at the same time as well. So within about a 2-month time period, they had some weird and unique, not out of the ordinary expenses, but certainly not monthly expenses, and you wouldn't know when they were going to come up, like a major car expense. But then a lot of insurances or property taxes, things that do routinely come up just once a year and at the same time, and they just were exhausted and said, financially, it just feels like this is an extraordinarily expensive time of year. So do you feel the same? Do you have that time of year? I think for many people, that's the fall or the holidays, but do you have that as well? And do you have a system to manage that? Well, early on in my career, my mentors, Josh Gregory, Kevin Korhorn, tuned me into a strategy that we'd started to help clients with back early in my career. And we've been helping clients with this strategy for the past 2 decades. It is fantastic. If you were to ask me, Mike, what's the financial planning strategy that you've seen change more people's lives than any other? While it's definitely not the most exciting, it's this one. And yes, it is. It's a budgeting type principle, and we call it the 3 bank account system. I talk about it a lot. But specifically to manage these, I've got this really expensive time period. It feels like all the bills come up during this quarter or these months. Specifically, it's that second bank account. That's the solution there. Okay, so briefly, what is the 3 bank account system? But really, what's that second bank account? The 3 bank account system. This is an operating system for your cash flow and for your banking, for your present financial position. So that first bank account is obviously going to be your checking account, but more importantly, you've got awareness on how much income is coming in and what all of your known monthly expenses are, whether those are fixed obligations, so it's the Netflix, it's going to happen every month and I know the exact amount, or it's a variable monthly expense where it's going to happen every month, but the amount will vary a little bit. So going out to eat or groceries or shopping, something like that. And you've done the math, or at least run the miles to say we've got enough income coming in to cover all of the known monthly expenses that are going to come up, and we've got enough to fund our goals. So we've got equilibrium here. We've got enough income coming in for the lifestyle that we have. That's bucket number 1. That's normally a monthly budget. Doesn't sound very exciting, but that's bucket number 1. I'm going to jump forward to bucket number 3 because you're likely familiar with that one too. Bucket number 3 is what would be called your emergency fund. I'd prefer to call it a financial confidence account, and that is where you've saved up money, you've got dollars kind of stashed away that if something unforeseen comes up, an emergency, an interruption to income, something rattles your financial cage and you need to get your hands on some cash, you've got it available. Now, how much should you have there? Lots of different thoughts on this, but it depends on your unique financial situation. 3 to 6 months of whatever that bucket number 1 expenses are, that's normally what a good rule of thumb is, but you've got to apply it to your situation. Should you have more than that? Should you have a little less? What are your thoughts? That's the first bank account and the third bank account. To deal with the expensive time of year, as well as a litany of other common financial challenges, cash flow challenges, bucket number 2 is really where all the magic happens. And that is a money market or savings account. By the way, that emergency fund is typically a money market account because hopefully you're putting a chunk of dollars there that aren't going to make you rich. It's not going to work really hard for you, but you should try to have it earn as much interest as possible. So that's typically a money market account. This middle account, bucket number 2, we call delayed spending. That's a savings account or money market, but here's the idea. That's where you're thinking proactively on your financial situation and thinking through all of the known upcoming expenses that are not monthly expenses, because the monthly expenses are handled. And the unknown, that's handled. So what are the known, even if you don't know exactly the timing, what are the known upcoming expenses? And you add all of you list all those out, you add them all up, and you divide it by 12, and you then go back to bucket number 1 and you save automatically that amount that would, add it all up, divide it by 12. You save out of your monthly budget, out of that bucket number 1, save into bucket number 2 that amount so that when those expenses come up, you got the cash for it. There's no problem. It's a non-monthly expense, but I was ready. I was prepared. So what are these sorts of things? Insurance premiums. Once a year insurance premiums. If they're not once a year, if they're monthly, say your home and auto insurance, your agent or your company said, well, you can pay it once a year or you can just pay it monthly. It's the same amount and one fits better in your budget, then you just put that in bucket number 1. You pay it monthly. But if there's a reason or a benefit to paying all at once with lots of insurance companies, there is, then yeah, pay the cheaper amount by paying it all at once, but then save up so that when that bill comes due, you've just got the cash, you can just write the check or make the payment. So things even like car repairs, you can't anticipate exactly when a car repair is going to come up, but you've got to be prepared for it because it inevitably happens. You're going to have to change your tires. You're going to get an fender bender. You're going to have, you'll go in for that oil change, find out you need a new transmission. That stuff happens. It's part of life. The question is, were you proactive enough with your finances? Were you able to save up for it or not? Home repairs, car replacement, vacations, birthdays and holidays, all sorts of things. I've had people say Cubs tickets. And this is before the Cubs won the World Series. They said, I know in my lifetime Cubs are winning the World Series, and I know I'm going. I know I'm going. Whenever they make the World Series, I am going. And so therefore, I've got to have a stash in my delayed spending so that when the Cubs make the World Series, I can go get tickets. They made it to the World Series, and that guy went, right? So what are the known upcoming expenses in your life? Are you financially prepared for them? You can be. implement that 3-bank account system, specifically that second bank account with the help of your CFP. If you don't have a CFP on your team, contact one on my team. Find us online, Korhorn.com. That's Korhorn with K. WiseMoneyShow.com. You can find us there as well. Or give us a call, 574-247-5898. All right, there you have it. Go out and take your next wise step in your financial life.